Athens, the cradle of Western civilization, the city that gave the world a radical, beautiful idea, democracy. The idea that ordinary citizens, not kings or tyrants, should hold the ultimate power. But what if that noble idea was a poisoned chalice? What if the very tools of freedom, free speech, the power of the people were the same tools that led to paranoia, mob rule, and strategic suicide? This is the story of the Athenian Paradox. In this video, we will explore how the world's first great experiment in democracy devoured itself, proving that even the noblest ideas can contain the seeds of their own destruction. Part 1. The Golden Age. The democratic ideal. To understand the fall, we must first appreciate the heights Athens achieved. In the 5th century BC, under the guidance of the statesman Pericles, Athenian democracy flourished. It was built on two revolutionary principles: isonomia, equality under the law, and isagoria, the equal right for every male citizen to speak and vote in the public assembly. This was not a representative democracy like modern systems. It was direct. Any citizen, be he a wealthy landowner or a humble potter, could stand before his peers on the Nix Hill and propose a law. He could vote on everything from taxes and treaties to the momentous decision of whether to go to war. Leaders were not untouchable. They could be held accountable, questioned, and even exiled by the will of the people. This system unleashed a wave of creativity and confidence that was unprecedented. It funded the construction of the Parthenon. It was the backdrop for the great plays of Sophocles and Euripides and the philosophical inquiries of Socrates. Athenian democracy made its citizens feel powerful, invested, and responsible for their city's destiny. It fueled Athens' rise to become the dominant power in the Greek world. But this incredible power given to the ordinary man came with profound and unforeseen dangers. Part 2. The first flaw. The rise of the demagogue. The principle of isagoria, the right to free speech, had a dark side. In an assembly of thousands, the wisest argument does not always win. The most persuasive argument does. This opened the door for a new kind of leader, the demagogue. The demagogue is a leader who gains power not by appealing to reason or expertise, but by appealing to the people's emotions, prejudices, and fears. They are masters of rhetoric, skilled at whipping a crowd into a frenzy and channeling popular anger for their own political gain. The most famous or infamous example in Athens was a man named Cleon. He was not from the traditional educated aristocracy. He was a tanner, a man of the people with a loud voice and a charismatic, aggressive style. He rose to power after the death of Pericles by positioning himself as the watchdog of the people, railing against the elites and advocating for a brutal, uncompromising war policy against Sparta. In one famous debate after the city of Mytilene had revolted and been recaptured, Cleon passionately argued that the assembly should vote to execute every single man in the city and enslave the women and children. His argument was based on fear and revenge. A rival speaker, Diodotus, appealed to reason and self-interest, arguing that such brutality would only inspire future enemies to fight to the death. The assembly, initially swayed by Cleon's bloodlust, narrowly voted for mercy. But the incident revealed a terrifying truth. The assembly, the very heart of the democracy, could be persuaded to commit mass atrocities based on a single powerful speech. Part 3. The second flaw. The tyranny of the majority. The power of the people, when unchecked by reason or law, can easily become the tyranny of the mob. To guard against the rise of a single powerful tyrant, the Athenians invented a unique political tool, ostracism. Once a year, the citizens could gather and vote by writing a name on a piece of pottery, or ostracon. If any one person received enough votes, $6,000, they would be exiled from Athens for 10 years. No trial was needed. No crime had to be committed. It was simply a vote of no confidence by the people. While intended as a safeguard, ostracism quickly became a vicious political weapon. It was used by rival politicians to eliminate their opponents. Great and respected leaders like the statesman Aristides the Just and the general Themistocles were ostracized not because they were tyrants, but because their rivals feared their popularity or disagreed with their policies. It created a culture of paranoia and envy. Any leader who became too successful, too popular, or simply angered the wrong faction could find themselves exiled. The very tool designed to protect the democracy was now being used to purge it of its most experienced and often wisest citizens, leaving a vacuum to be filled by the populist demagogues. This created a volatile, dangerously overconfident political climate. Athens was now perfectly primed to make the single worst decision in its history, a decision born from democratic fervor that would lead directly to its ruin. Part 4. Democratic Suicide. The Sicilian Expedition, 415–413 BC. This was the moment the Athenian Paradox came to its tragic, bloody conclusion. The charismatic, handsome, and reckless aristocrat Alcibiades, a student of Socrates, stood before the assembly. He proposed a massive, incredibly ambitious military expedition to invade the powerful island of Sicily. He spoke of the immense wealth that could be won, the glory for Athens, and the ease of the conquest. He captivated the crowd with a vision of an even greater Athenian empire. A wise and experienced old general named Nicias argued passionately against it. He spoke of the immense costs, the logistical nightmare of supplying an army so far from home, and the danger of underestimating the Sicilian forces. He presented a rational, cautious, and fact-based argument. He appealed to their reason. Alcibiades appealed to their greed and their pride. He won. The assembly, whipped into a patriotic frenzy, voted overwhelmingly for the expedition. But it didn't stop there. In a stunning display of populist overconfidence, they dismissed Nicias's warnings of the cost. Instead, they took his high estimates as a challenge and voted to make the invasion force even larger and more magnificent, assigning both the reluctant Nicias and the eager Alcibiades as its commanders. It was a decision made by a cheering crowd, not by sober military strategists. The result was the greatest military catastrophe in Greek history. Alcibiades, shortly after the expedition began, was recalled to Athens to face religious charges and defected to Sparta, actively helping them defeat his own city. The Athenian army, led by the unwilling Nicias, became bogged down in Sicily. After years of brutal fighting, the entire force, tens of thousands of soldiers, and over 200 ships, the flower of Athens' power, was completely annihilated. Almost no one returned home. It was a self-inflicted wound from which Athens would never ever recover. The democracy itself, in a fit of arrogant passion, had voted for its own destruction. So how did democracy kill democracy? The very elements designed to make it great were the sources of its failure. The freedom of speech, isagoria, that allowed for open debate also allowed for the rise of demagogues who manipulated the masses with emotion. The power of the people, demos kratos, that was meant to prevent tyranny, became a tyranny of its own, exiling its best leaders and voting for disastrous wars based on pride and greed. The Athenian system had no effective safeguards against its own worst instincts. There was no constitution to protect against the passions of the mob, no filter to separate persuasive rhetoric from wise counsel. The story of Athens is not an argument against democracy. It is a timeless and urgent warning about its inherent fragility. It is a lesson that true, sustainable self-governance requires more than just the right to vote. It requires a culture of reason, a respect for expertise, a protection of minority rights, and a constant vigilance against the seductive call of the demagogue. This journey into the great political lessons of the past is our core mission. If you believe these warnings from history are more important than ever, show your support by hitting the like button. And to continue exploring the complex ideas that have shaped our world, subscribe and ring the notification bell. Because the Athenian Paradox teaches us that the most difficult challenge of any democracy is and always will be protecting it from itself.